Wasn't there? What was the one that they just? Oh, the Davos thing. What's the difference between Davos and this is just a NATO meeting? Like that. That's it.
Mostly focused on NATO this time. Yes.
Got you. Okay. So people like Gavin Newsom aren't allowed to come there and parade themselves around. Like they're on auction or something. Like they're on auction or something. Like
you always bring in your ex-governor, man. I think he must have hurt your heart or something. Spain in the past has been very expansionist. Like when you go to different parts of the world, people have Spanish surnames. Lots and lots of people speak Spanish. Why? Because of the conquistadors and how they traveled throughout the world, conquering different lands. But now they have a very pacifist approach towards war. By America becoming the world's police, other countries became beholden to the United States. But but for every decision, there's a cost to be paid. Now, the downside of that is that when you're talking about NATO and the United States allies, they just became lazy. And over time, they just said, oh, the United States will protect us. So yeah, go ahead and put military bases here. And the United States was like, cool. I think Trump's means to an end was, oh, okay, so you won't allow us to use your military bases and you're not contributing your fair share to NATO. And then that's when he calls them out. And Trump is the best at calling people out. 100%. There's no question about that. We don't need NATO like we needed them before. No. Because Russia is not the same type of threat like they used to be, even though they're a nuclear threat. We kind of understand Russia's playbook now. Based on the way that I'm processing how people are going to make the Strait of Hormuz irrelevant, is there's a lot of infrastructure that has to be developed and built, and that takes time. That's a large infrastructure.
I don't agree with that. I just don't agree with it. Well, look what the German
you can deny and disagree with gravity. That doesn't make it.
Len, look at history for a second. When you get this college degree and let's say you're a chemical engineer, mid-career median wage $135,000, how do you survive off of that when $106,000 is considered Section 8 poverty in Orange County, California now?
It's very
What's
difficult.
going on with this? Why do you pay so much for this education to get so little in return? We were going to import all these immigrants and use much more electricity in the state of New York and we didn't know about this.
No,
we didn't think that was going to counterbalance the grid, Len.
No, Chris, that has nothing to do with it.
We weren't ultra realistic enough to think that we would need more energy production instead of capping nuclear production, and instead of telling us we can't drill oil. These are all the problems of our politicians. They're manifesting in front of us.
Welcome to the Family Office, planning for the people who matter most.
I wish I could say this is a real katana because I really do have an affinity for katanas, because I used to work on the Highlander. I don't know if you remember that show.
I remember that show. Sure. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And I was in my early 20s. So I had all the replicas. So I'd literally run around my house, and I was single, and I'd run around my house just like doing the quickening,
swiping the swords, huh?
Yeah. Right. No, this is a fake one. So this is like one of those ones you get from medieval times, but it was left in here on the chair. But
gotcha.
My kids, what they do is they all have the fake, like the practicing axes, swords, flails, like everything medieval, but it's like this, it's kind of hard, right? And they full blown war, attack each other with it in the house.
That's funny. that's funny. Hey, boys will be boys, man.
No, the girls too.
Like, really? Okay.
The 6-year-old is like, when are we going to play Battle Warrior Ninjas? And they love it, man. They beat the crap out of each other with fake swords, huh?
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Pretty fun to watch.
I remember years ago you gave me a sword from Spain, and I still have that sword. It's so beautiful with all the intricate designs on the handle, and it's super heavy, and it has the frame where you can hang it down, and so people always asking me about it. So
that's the Charlemagne sword I think I gave you. It's the King Charlemagne sword, right?
Yeah,
I think that's what it was. It's a beautiful sword, by the way.
It is. It's
a beautiful sword. But speaking of Spain, you were going to say something about Spain.
Yeah.
We're talking about Spain today.
Yeah. So considering the fact that Spain has been resistant to the whole NATO concept of everybody pulling their fair share, supposedly, and Spain is kind of resistant to that. So I'm very curious to how you feel about that. Why do you think Spain is doing it?
Well, first and foremost, I mean, this obviously is didn't we just do a conference like this? Like, I don't understand. Like, wasn't there, what was the one that they just, the Davos thing? What's the difference between Davos and this is just a NATO meeting? Like that's it?
Mostly focused on NATO this time. Yes.
Got you. Okay. So people like Gavin Newsom aren't allowed to come there and parade themselves around like they're on auction or something. Like they're on auction or something. Like
you always bring in your ex-governor, man. I think he must have hurt your heart or something.
He did hurt my heart. He did hurt my heart. He forced me to not like something that I liked for a long time in my life, which was California.
That's funny, man. That's funny.
No,
so how do you feel about Spain? What's your opinion about their resistance?
Well, I think that obviously giving this as settings at a NATO meeting. What's odd to me is why, I mean, everybody seems to be falling in line. Even Melania, or what's her name? The prime minister from Italy.
Estonia? Okay, yes.
Even she's falling in line, right? Because there was that whole spat about the airspace usage and all that stuff. But Spain has flat out just been the outlier. But everyone's falling in line with the budgets. And I think it all centers around like this 5% number or something that they were talking about. And they just flat out refused to commit. They were the only ones in the room that didn't want to commit. So it's odd to me why you would want to choose to be at this time the outlier. Given the current economic state of every European country, and even in Germany, which is the biggest and the best economy in the European Union, right? And it's also not in good shape. So given all of the uncertainty that's going on around in the world right now, you would expect everybody to, why? I don't know the angle there. I know Spain has always been kind of like that outlaw kind of state, or that outlier kind of state. I mean, Spain doesn't really want to do anything. They just want to lay around and drink grapes or drink wine. And I mean, Spain's great, by the way. I'd love to. Spain's one of my best places to visit.
Spain is awesome, man.
It is, but they don't want to do anything. And maybe that's it. They're just like, leave us alone for the rest of the world, or the rest of the time. We're so tired of having wars and starting wars that we're done doing that now. That was the Middle Ages. Spain. We don't do those things here in Spain anymore. We just want to sit here and eat food.
You know what? I think you have a really good point there, because I never really thought about it through that lens. But now that you say that really connected a dot that I wasn't connecting before, which is Spain in the past has been very expansionist. Like when you go to different parts of the world, people have Spanish surnames. Lots and lots of people speak Spanish. Why? Because of the conquistadors and how they traveled throughout the world, conquering different lands. But now they have a very pacifist approach towards war. And so one of the things, like, we're going to talk a little bit about later, is the debt to GDP ratio in different countries and stuff like that. We will break it down. So don't tune out, because this is important, because it impacts everybody. But anyway, with Spain, their whole approach is, look, we don't want to spend a lot of our income and our revenues on war. They're more of a socialist welfare state. I don't want to label them socialist, but they're definitely a welfare state, where they're very much into social programs. They're very much into, taking measures to make sure that their folks have different government funded programs. And so they don't want to divert those monies over to fund war. So I didn't understand why, but I'm wondering if their past and just the whole idea of, the conquistadors of Spain, if that whole negative imagery has made its way in. Because here's the thing, at the end of the day, if the populace within Spain, because remember, when we were there was this tension between Spain and I think it was like Catalonia or something like that. I may be pronouncing it wrong, but remember, they were
Barcelona.
Yeah, but there was a sector within Barcelona where they have a different flag,
different everything. Yeah.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of internal tension. And I think that if they continue to divert their monies away from social programs and education and things like that, then that could have some negative implications on, elections and who's in office and things like that. So that's I think that's part of it.
I could definitely see that. To me, when we were in Spain, I had a blast, and that was like 2017. So I think it's changed a lot too. They don't even want tourism there, right? There was that whole tourist.
That's crazy.
That was like a few months ago or something, or it's been ongoing.
And they just finished the church after, the whole 144 years of building, and it's such a beautiful edifice. And so I think that would be a major, major attraction. So I think any country that doesn't want tourism is a problem. I thought you were going to speak more about Trump because, Trump brought up Spain a lot. And I think he's just picking on them more than others because they didn't want to allow the United States to use their air bases in their wars, in their attacks in the Middle East. And so Spain was like, no, you're not using our ports. If you want to find somebody else, but we're not going to be the one because, again, we're taking a more pacifist approach. And so I thought that you'd spend some time talking about that.
Well, I mean, definitely that goes without being said. I mean, here's the reality behind that with what you said there. Everything's fine and great until the what hits the fan, and that's when they call. And Trump said that. He said, watch what happens, because he said, look, we're going to cut off trade with them, which I think is great. Cut off trade with them. Look, if you don't want to play ball, then we're not going to play ball with you. And that's the stance I think America needs to have, because look, since post World War II, America has bankrolled and has been the muscle for everybody. So it's our fault too, because we've spoiled the crap out of everybody in our alliances, and maybe we force them to be who they are. Maybe I don't really know the answers to that. But whether we forcibly did it or we unintentionally did it, we have pretty much raised sissy baby allies, and that's partially our fault. I believe it's 50% the United States' fault, and 50% of it is our allies' fault. You can't sit back and expect America to bankroll it and then complain about how we do it, and then bitch and complain about everything else that we do and not like our policies. It's like kind of like what you said earlier. And you said government funding programs. I think that terminology should be permanently changed to capitalist funded programs, because in reality, the government doesn't make any money unless a capitalist goes and makes money. Because if you don't have that system, then you simply have what Bernie Sanders has been ranting about for the last, couple years now. The oligarchs, bro, you're an oligarch. That's what you get. You get oligarchs. You get oligarchs in a socialist and a communist situation, because guess what? No one's producing anything anymore. So guess what? You operate in a scarce mindset, and you operate in a starvation mindset. So of course, everybody starts to hoard resources. That's exactly what happens. So Spain is doing that. They're like, oh, yeah, you know what? We don't want to do anything. We don't want to pay for anything. But then when something happens, that's when they go, wait a minute, they're first in line. And that's Trump's biggest issue with NATO in general. But Spain seems to be the one it's like that, it's like when you have a bunch of kids, Len, and you got to do an about face, or you got to change something. There's always that one that's like, you're like, dude, don't be the one to just that kid.
Right.
And sometimes it's random, but then sometimes, everybody has that one kid where you're just like, that was my brother Brian.
Spain is that one.
That was my brother Brian.
There's always one. It's the brother, it's the uncle. Yeah. I think what happened, and this is just my opinion. So I think what happened is when, the post World War II, as the United States was expanding because of, location and its economic prosperity, because their economy wasn't blown up. I think what happened is they used the military as a way to gain power, leverage, and influence. And what I mean by that is that by America becoming the world's police, other countries became beholden to the United States. But then but for every decision, there's a cost to be paid.
Right.
And so the benefit of the United States becoming the world's police is that everybody was scared of the United States, and the military might allowed the United States to become the number one economy in the world. And also other countries were afraid to compete against the United States for global supremacy. So the United States really had lots of years of economic prosperity because of that. Now, the downside of that is that when you're talking about NATO and the United States allies, they just became lazy. And over time, they just said, oh, the United States will protect us. So yeah, go ahead and put military bases here. And the United States was like, cool, because that allows us to leverage our military might and go fight wars in different places and not have to fly overseas. And so it was definitely a major benefit to the United States. But now Trump comes in and he applies pressure to say, look, you know, you've got all these countries here that are enjoying the power of the United States. But if Russia comes to attack you, you're going to have a problem. And so, you know, so I think both sides bring valid arguments to the table, but I understand why Spain is pushing back. I disagree with it, but I understand why they're pushing back from their perspective. So it's just interesting how different leaders exert pressure in different ways because they have specific means to an end. And I think Trump's means to an end was, oh, okay, so you won't allow us to use your military bases and you're not contributing your fair share to NATO. And then that's when he calls them out. And Trump is the best at calling people out. 100%. There's no question about that.
Have you ever thought about it this way? And I'm going to propose something because it makes a lot of sense to me in my head.
Okay.
I don't think you can completely get mad or point a finger and say, oh my God, like the United States is doing this because da, da, da. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that the United States runs on a capitalist system. Okay. And here's what I mean by that. If you have training programs, right, like fitness programs, if you follow those programs or those protocols, you can expect a common outlook or a common result, right?
Sure.
So for example, if you get on a ketogenic diet and you reduce your carbohydrate intake, you'll go into ketosis and you'll burn fat and you'll lose a lot of weight really fast, right? Which is essentially what a GLP-1 does. Okay. Mm-hmm. And that's why GLP-1s are so successful because because of exactly the chemical process and the enzyme, that process is stopping the fact that you need to eat and reducing the insulin and making you more insulin sensitive. Great. Capitalism is the same exact thing. Look at it that way. Capitalism is an operating system for a country and a government, right? Just like socialism is, just like communism is, just like monarchies are, just like all the other systems that we've had of governments and economic systems in the world, right? Mm-hmm. So if you plug these types of situations, what you just described, America had bases and da-da-da-da. We were just doing what a capitalist nation would do. We got a better deal. Wait, you're going to give us land? Wait, you're going to let us do military bases? You understand what I'm saying, Len? Are you following that?
I'm tracking with you. with you.
So in other words,
what's your main thesis?
My main thesis is that if you keep doing this, America's just going to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger because capitalism always is going to find a way to innovate, and it's always going to find a way to make more money and get a better deal and make things more efficient. You don't have that in a monarchy. You don't have that in socialism or communism. You said earlier, oh, they just got lazy. You know why they got lazy? Because that system makes you get lazy. Mm-hmm. See, capitalism forces you not to get lazy because if you're operating in America in a capitalist system, you and I know, Len, every single day you get up and you go, I got to get better today. Mm-hmm. I got to get better today. Because if you don't get better in your space and I don't get better in my space, what happens? We get left behind. We get left behind. So capitalism forces that. Now switch it. You and I have both made a good amount of money. You and I continue to both make money. If we put ourselves into any other type of system where we're at now, we don't want to work anymore. So what does our mindset force us to do? Preservation. Keep, hoard, create legislation so that other people can't ever get my stuff and I can keep it without having to work. So
go ahead.
Communists, socialists, ultra liberals, they are those people because they can afford to be that way now. Mm-hmm. Without a capitalist, they can't afford to be that way. And you see it. That's why they don't work. That's why they fail, because you run out of energy. You run out of new energy. You can't, if we built houses the way we built houses 200 years ago, houses wouldn't be as safe and last as long and so on and so forth. But because of the process of innovation, like for example, France is bitching and moaning because they have an air conditioning problem. that is indicative of their system of government. They don't have an oh, it's America's fault. No, it's not. It's not
it's
America's
an innovation problem.
It's your fault. So that's kind of, does that make sense, Len?
No,
what do you think about that theory there? Because it makes sense in my head to me.
Okay, so there's a part of it that I agree with, and there's a part of it that I diverge a little bit. And so the part that I agree with is that capitalism drives innovation. Innovation drives work ethic and constant, and personal and corporate and societal evolution from the standpoint of making improvements and all of those things. And so because of that, in a capitalistic system, your incentive structure necessitates that you stay sharp, that you stay, like it's me. If I don't improve, then life for me is going to change. And capitalism, socialism and communism is really more about the collective. And then there's this reliance on the government. And so as a result of that, governmental systems that want to be relied on are inherently, they're not innovative. And so they're also authoritative and in some cases oppressive. And so then the people begin to rely on the government and they're not innovating and they're not, excelling. And so because I agree with that part of it, the part where I diverge a little bit is that when you talk about the United States expanding into different countries, there's a different objective now because the United States has already established its military bases. So they don't have to necessarily have the same expansionary mindset because that's already established. So now, because the economic tides are shifting towards AI innovation, I believe that's where the United States says, okay, we've already established the basis, so we don't need to do that anymore. And we want you to do your fair share because we don't need you like we used to. And so therefore it allows Trump in that type of an environment to apply more pressure for them to do their fair share. It's like, look, I can go build your house, but once I finish building it, I don't really need to build it anymore. So I need you to pay the electricity bill. I need you to get a new air conditioning unit in your house. And so then because of that, the United States shifted its focus. And so therefore, we don't need NATO like we needed them before. No. Because Russia is not the same type of threat like they used to be, even though they're a nuclear threat. We kind of understand Russia's playbook now. They have nuclear capabilities, but they're not necessarily going to use them because they understand that means the end of mankind as we know it. So that's my feedback on what you had to say. Do you agree, disagree? Where do you stand on that?
No, I understand where you're coming from. I totally do. And I agree. I agree with that. I just think that at a baseline, systems influence everything.
I agree.
And if you are in a capitalist country and you've been raised that way and you take advantage of it, you look at everything through that lens. Everything gets processed through that lens. And if you're a socialist or even an anarchist, everything gets processed through that lens. Much like if you're an emotionally geared person versus a logically geared person, everything, no matter what you do, is always going to get processed through that dominant lens first.
I agree.
And then you start to subset it. So look, I think that NATO, I think NATO is getting done, or Trump is doing to NATO what any good captain or manager or whatever you want to call it or executive would do, and say, hey, look, here's what's on the table. And if you guys do it, you do it. If you don't, adios, we're out. And when the door comes knocking or someone comes knocking on the door, it's going to be far worse. And that's what I think Trump is trying to avoid or get the United States out of. And I agree with is that, when they don't do their part, then that means that's more sacrifice and more weight on us. And therefore, when we have to do that, we have to make capitalist decisions to adjust to fix that problem more so than it should have been fixed, right? We have to overcompensate for that problem. So when we do that, that means we're going to make more money and we're going to innovate better and we're going to get bigger. And that might require us to do more bases and more military expansion. See, that's what I'm getting at with that. So you can't get mad at us expanding or doing all these things when you're not doing what we're asking you to do, because by design, we have to do these things and we don't know how to do them any better. right?
Well,
Maybe that you see what I'm saying, or maybe we do, but that's the way we know how to do them in capitalism, which is what? Get leaner, get meaner, get innovative, get smarter, get tougher, get better, and get bigger. And that's capitalism. Boom, boom, boom. And these communists and socialists and these aristocrats, they're like, we just want to sit and drink wine and drink grapes and pretend that the fire's not burning outside. But in reality, it is, right? So,
yeah, speaking of fires burning outside and the United States not being able to use Spain's military base, we've been having this ongoing bet about this war that's happening and the ceasefire agreement and the MOU. And we vowed not to talk about it unless something else happened.
This is true.
Last week, something else happened. So we won't spend a lot of time here, but I really am interested to hear from your perspective what's going on from our perspective versus the Iranians' perspective.
I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I'm not puzzled, but I'm not fully puzzled because, but then I do understand it. Look, I do have an end game with the whole Iran thing. And I think the end game is exactly what I said is at the end of the day, it's not the best solution, but it does give the United States a get out of jail free card. And I think that is becoming more evident when you're seeing all these, and maybe it's a test too, Len, because maybe Trump is going to see if the coalition, because I still think that coalition is key. This making us work. And what I mean by that is the Middle Eastern coalition of Qatar, Saudi Arabia, all those guys, UAE. I think he was sitting back and watched to see, okay, are these guys going to step in? And there are other countries that committed to sending ships down there because look, Trump was like, all right, cool, we're going to give you a week off. And because of all the things that are going on, the funerals and things like that. And then what do these guys do on Monday? They attack 3 ships. And then on Tuesday, they do it again. So it's kind of almost like I think Trump was hoping they weren't going to do that. I mean, everybody was hoping they weren't going to do that. But deep down inside, there's a 50% chance they're going to do that because that's what history says, because that's what they always have done in that area. So he wanted to see, number one, if that was going to happen, their move. Number two, he wanted to see if the allies are going to step up and which direction they were going to apply pressure. And they're applying pressure, I think, the long way, which is, and you're starting to see this, they're building alternatives to get around to make the Strait of Hormuz obsolete. And that really is, I think, is the only thing that really is the long-term solution is make it so the Strait of Hormuz is obsolete. And that's what they're doing. And I think that's the long game. I think Trump thought or hoped maybe that they were going to play short game a little bit with them and put some ships there and be more aggressive that way. But I don't see that happening. I think only some major Western allies might do that finally give in to Trump. And I think a few of them signaled that they're going to do that. But I think that it's getting into that stage now where they're just never going to play ball. And you're going to have to play the get out of jail free card and all this stuff. I don't like the fact that we have to fire kinetic energies and missiles because I just don't like the war shit. But sometimes it's necessary. So maybe strategic attacks, but it definitely is a pain in the butt. Here's what does excite me, though. It scared me a little bit when I saw oil go over 75, but I see oil retreating right now. So that makes me a little happier because that tells me that it's not as bad, but it also tells you that the market is now becoming insulated to it. And that's exactly what Trump's long-term goal was. However, it's a freaking barn fire for sure. It is a dumpster fire, barn fire, hot mess. And I wish he wouldn't have got himself into it until after midterms.
Mm-hmm. So what I would,
but I'm not scared by any means, Len. I'm still bullish. I'm still bullish.
I get it.
But I'm not sweating over here like you are sweating.
I'm not sweating at all. Okay, now here's the thing.
I see a little bit right here. I'm just kidding.
So here's the thing with Iran is that, again, as I've stated before, their position is now about leverage. And I think to your point about the long game, I think they understand that they have a limited window in which they can exercise that leverage. And so one of the reasons why they attacked those commercial ships is because they were going down by the other country on the southern part of the Strait of Hormuz, as opposed to going through, as opposed to going through the Iranian part. And so when those ships started going that route, they said, look, you need to come through us because one, we control the Strait of Hormuz right now, and two, we want to be able to tax different vessels and all of these things to
Isn't
be able
that in
to
itself an act of war, though, Len? Like, no one controls international waters. So how can you just arbitrarily say you now control international waters? See, that's what Trump is saying.
Okay.
That's his whole point, though, right? It's like,
I know,
what are you guys going to do about it?
Okay, here's the thing, though. I understand what you're saying as it relates to that being an act of war, and I agree with that. All I'm saying is that Iran has an opportunity to exert its pressure and its leverage by controlling the Strait of Hormuz. And so every vessel that goes through there, they want to have a say about it. And they know that between now and the only time that that's ever going to go away, that leverage that I'm talking about, is what you said. If Saudi Arabia, Oman, Bahrain, all the different countries start going around the Strait of Hormuz and having land bridges and using trains to transport the oil as opposed to ships through that strait. Until that happens, Iran is going to exercise its leverage. And the reason why the United States was able to give all of that money to Iran up until the time that they attacked the vessels, they've already given them billions of dollars, by the way. And so
they didn't
Iran
give it to them. They unfroze what they already had.
They unfroze. Okay, got it. But it's like the difference between saving and generating revenue. It's still extra money in your pocket.
I think it's horse shit, no matter how you say it. But I get what you're saying.
It's semantics. So, but the thing is that when the Iranians attacked those ships, they wanted to exercise the leverage, and they knew all along that the United States wasn't going to play ball. So what did the United States do? They go and they attack 60 of their IRGC boats, and they attack a bunch of military bases and different places where they can shoot weaponry from to degrade their ability to do surface to air missiles. So I understand why the United States retaliated, and I understand from the Iranians' perspective why they wanted to attack the ships. They didn't want to sink it because they could have sunk those ships. They didn't sink it. They wanted to send a message to say, look, you need to play ball with us. We're the ones that are in control. And by the Iranians just sending out the drone to attack those ships, what happens? The insurers say, look, in order for you to go through the Strait of Hormuz, it's going to cost you a lot of extra money. And so because of that, the trickle down effect is that we end up paying the price at the pumps. And so the Iranians understand that, and they know that if we're paying more at the pump, we're not going to be extremely happy about the way the economy is going. Because why? The war was started with Israel and the United States. And so it's really a problem of our own doing. And so we're going to place blame on the administration for that.
Right. Yeah, so I think it's very valid. And it is, like I said, it's a difficult situation, but I think it is forced. And I think it makes them, I think that's their last card. That's their last quiver, is that. And it's only going to become more annoying and more annoying to the point then where it's going to be, like you said, that window is going to close very fast.
It's going to be 10 years though. 10 years of prosperity.
No way. It's going to, that window that they have to leverage that strait is going to be closed within the next 6 months to 9 months. Guaranteed. Guaranteed.
There is no, okay.
Guaranteed, Len. Guaranteed.
How? How? Yes.
Guaranteed.
Okay. Because look, maybe we're defining it based on two different perspectives. So let me tell you my perspective and why I vehemently and violently disagree with your 6-month timeline. Because what I'm saying is that the only way to really be able to circumvent the Strait of Hormuz is to build a land pathway. So you've got to dig the trenches. You've got to, lay the pipes. You've got to redivert the oil. And then once Iran catches wind of it, they can send drones to attack, the infrastructure that's going to create that land bridge as opposed to the strait.
You don't think that if they do that, you're going to cause all out aggression from their neighbors if they're
Of course.
attack.
Of course.
They don't want that. They're showing their worst side right now, Len. They're
Dude, there's so much worse they can do, dude. The salination plants, they haven't attacked that. They haven't attacked their major infrastructure. They've been making strategic.
You're making a point even more so to de-escalate them and de-arm them. You're making that point even more. Because here's the fact, here's the reality. You just said if those allies and those countries in those regions create a civil project to make the Strait of Hormuz obsolete on their own sovereign land, you're saying that the Iranians are going to retaliate about that and bomb that? You're saying they're going to bomb a civilian project because they don't like it because it takes away their leverage point? That's like war, dude. Like that's war, isn't it? Like, isn't that like
okay,
war?
but remember, every country always act in their own self-interest. And so if the Iranians, I'm not saying that it's inevitable that they would attack and hurt civilians on purpose. I'm not saying that at all. But what I'm saying is that that your 6-month timeline, based on the way that I'm processing how people are going to make the Strait of Hormuz irrelevant, is there's a lot of infrastructure that has to be developed and built, and that takes time. Even if there's no intervention from the Iranians' perspective, meaning they're going to bomb people and hurt the progress of that infrastructure being built, it's still going to take so much time and so much money that you're talking hundreds and in some places thousands of miles of trenches that need to be built. That's a large infrastructure.
I don't agree with that. I just don't agree with it.
Well,
look what the German
you can deny and disagree with gravity. That doesn't make it.
Len, look at history for a second.
Okay.
Look at history for a second. How fast did the German war machine and the Blitzkrieg dominate all of Europe and almost Russia?
It was
fast.
It was very fast.
How much faster did the American system destroy the rest of the world? And I use the word destroy because it was very destructive. How fast did the United States do an about face and all of a sudden out manufacture, out produce, out militarize without any of the previous stuff? Like
you can use the same. You can use the same example with Ukraine with the building drones and everything.
Exactly.
I get that.
So
but manufacturing. But here's the thing, though, Chris. Because I want to answer your question. Manufacturing and digging infrastructure are very, very different. Very different. And you're talking about digging earth. Right, you're talking about moving tons and tons, and then the pipe infrastructure and the oil. There's a lot of moving parts there, Chris.
I get all that. But
what happens if you have mountains and rivers and streams and all of these things that you have to go around?
I get all of that.
6 months, brother. There's no way.
I get all of that. I understand all of that. Here's what I mean by that. Within 6 to 9 months, you could completely isolate Iran off militarily. Less than that time, you get a couple other allies in there. They're going to pack that place out, and Iran's military is useless because it'll be obviously destroyed. There'll be nothing there, and the allies will control that strait until an alternate is constructed on the ground. And I think you could do that within a few years if you put the best that we have in this country and let them go loose without any type of obscene oversight in that area with the help of the coalition over there. You could build out the world's greatest infrastructure project to get rid of that, and you'd innovate in the process, because America became great, Len, because of situations like this, because we were forced to innovate ourselves out of a situation. In World War II, we were forced to innovate, and our strategy was overwhelm, mass production, and that was our strategy, and it worked.
The only way, to your point, I agree with that point. The only way that we would be able to pull this off is that if our perspective on globalism started to change. Because really, again, the only reason why we even care about the Strait of Hormuz is because of our neighbors, because we're not relying on the oil. You made that point many podcasts ago.
We don't need it. We don't need that oil at all.
But our neighbors do in a big way.
Then they can start buying from us, or they can help us secure the strait.
Okay, so
doesn't
if
seem
they
like a bad
started buying
trade-off.
if they start buying from us, then we don't have the incentive to help build the infrastructure to connect.
No, they do,
the
though.
oil. Exactly.
But
So if
wait,
they don't,
hold on, Len. You don't think we have the incentive to do it? We're capitalists. If you give us an opportunity, we're going to take it. I mean, you think for a second there's companies in America, if they don't get the green light, they're chomping to go build infrastructure in that area of the world. You don't think that?
I believe that. But if
You don't think Halliburton is there going, please?
You are correct in that. I mean, we will definitely take any opportunity to make an extra dollar. But if our focus as a country is about building AI infrastructure, you can't have too many focuses in different places.
I
the
agree with
number one focus is AI, because one of the things we should probably talk about in an upcoming episode or so is how China is utilizing United States intellectual property to bolster its AI economy. I don't know if you've taken a deep dive on that. We need to talk about that.
We do that because it's nothing new. They've been stealing IP for decades, but specifically here, and that's where we talk about the regulation. We've talked about capping models. That hurts. That's where we got to figure out how to uncap models like that.
In a big way. So let's switch gears a little bit. And you sent me an interesting article regarding college degrees and graduation and everything. And the reason why I'm interested in that is because, I was brought up, you go to school, you get good grades, and because of that, you get a job. And so I got a bunch of degrees and got a bunch of debt in the process. Whereas you decided, you know what, I'm going to go to work and I'm going to make a bunch of money, and I'm not going to spend all this time in college. And, and I would consider both of us, intelligent people. And so college doesn't make one more intelligent than anybody else. So I'm very interested to hear your perspective about the graphic you sent me. And I have my 2 cents, but I really want to hear from you.
You saw both of them, right?
I did.
Okay, so you have the lowest paying degrees and you have the highest paying degrees.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because I just looked at this data and I just started making I just started looking at it and analyzing it. The lowest paying degrees are by large education degrees. Mm-hmm. Those are the lowest paying degrees. I mean, you think about secondary education, special education, general education, elementary education, early childhood education. They're the lowest paying degrees. Like if you go and get a degree for child education, you're only getting paid $52,000. That's mid-career median wage. Mid-career, not even starting. That's like, hey, I spent, what's mid-career? 10 years, 15, 30? What is
15, between 10 and 15 years.
Can you imagine spending 15 years of your life to get $52,000 a year? It's like the sheriff department or the teacher here in it was a city in Klein, I think it was Klein, Texas. Klein.
Klein. Okay.
Klein School District, Len.
Okay.
Do you know how much the superintendent was getting paid?
I have no idea.
Guess. Take a stab at it.
Superintendent in Klein. Yeah. What's the population there roughly? I'm not familiar with that.
Idea.
Is it more than 500,000 people?
I doubt it. Let's see. Klein school district.
All that matters because the size of the school district matters how much they get paid. I'm technical, man. You shouldn't have asked me that question.
Let me get this. Let me get this for you. Let me get you this. 51 to 58,000 students.
Okay, got it. So a superintendent for 51 to 58,000 students, you should be making north of 300K.
Should he be making 700?
Whoa. 700. Okay.
700,000.
I didn't think that far north.
Do you know what a 30-year teacher in that district makes?
I have no idea.
60,000.
Wow, that's a big discrepancy.
$59,000.
Superintendents, they deal with a lot. Then they work a lot of hours because I was on that trajectory, so I get that.
Glenn.
But that's a big
700,000, baby.
700? Yeah, that's a lot.
700. So when I look at this, and then I'm like, dang, performing arts. Well, you could make 75,000, right? But then when you look at the highest paying degrees, they're all in engineering, chemical engineering, computer engineering, aerospace, electrical engineering, computer science, mechanical engineering, construction services, civil engineering. And I think when you look at this, these degrees, and you see where that education system is going, it's all geared towards it's all geared towards trades again. It's all geared towards people creating and innovating again. But still, even at that, Len, when you get this college degree and let's say you're a chemical engineer, mid-career median wage, $135,000, how do you survive off of that when $106,000 is considered Section 8 poverty in Orange County, California now?
It's very
What's
difficult.
going on with this?
Now,
why do you pay so much for this education to get so little in return? That's where I'm like going, education is like, is the education system being forced out, or is it just being innovated out? Because why would I go spend all this time to do this outside of the sake of argument of dignity and self-respect when I can go do something stupid on the internet and make 100x that?
Yeah, it's a tough question. And I think it's an age old question, which is how do you strategically how do you strategically go to college? Because in the past, the economy and the context was different. So before the whole college revolution, it was, okay, I'm going to go work for a factory. So if I lived in Detroit, I can go work for Ford and make a really good living. And my house was $25,000 to $50,000. If I had a pension, I could live on, $1,000 a month and be comfortable. And so nowadays, when you look at the cost of living and you look at the wages, cost of living has significantly surpassed wages. And so before, a teacher's salary used to provide a living wage, but now it doesn't. And so because of that, when you look at teachers and educators and psychologists and things like that, they're getting paid based on the tax base that's created through business and commerce, because they're not creating, they're creating value, but it's intrinsic value, if that makes sense. So teachers are educating the next generation, which is a value, but there isn't a tangible value associated with it. So by virtue of that, they're going to get paid less. But before, when it was a living wage, it wasn't an issue because most teachers and most educators were predominantly female. So if you live in a 2-income household and they're married to somebody who's in more of the technical spaces, now making an income of $22,000 50 years ago was no problem. And so now when you look at, STEAM, which is, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, they're actually in jobs and in careers that create other jobs and that create infrastructure economically. And so therefore they can pay them more. So it's just the economics of those career paths. So what kids nowadays have to do is they have to look at college and say, okay, does this major put me in a financial position to be able to take care of myself economically? And others may say, you know what? I don't really care. I'm not driven by money. I don't really care about that. I just want to make an impact and I want to make a difference. And both pathways are okay, but it's important to understand that one needs to be intentional about the pathway they take, because if they don't want to make money, then they've got to understand that the lifestyle they live has to be very modest, and they have to make sure that the way in which they expect their tangible life to look should be considerably less than the person that decides to take a different career path on the more technical side.
What it takes to be, I have the what it takes, but I was going to find what it takes to live comfortably in each state. And I want to say, I can't find it right now, but I want to say if I do find it, we'll come up on it again. Okay. I wish I would have sent it to you because I don't have it. But I want to tell you that when I was looking at it, it's far more than all of these. It's far more than all of these. Like, to live comfortably in most states, you need to make more than these degrees. Like, I want to say it's somewhere around I want to say the average was like somewhere around 180, almost 200,000 a year.
Yeah. I mean, it's important to really understand the data, because, like, for example,
you can chop it up any way you want.
Yeah, because the median income really just talks about, a large sector of people kind of in
Correct.
that middle. It's not average. And so there's, outliers on both sides. So like, for example, in Wyoming, a teacher's going to make, somewhere in the 20s to 40s versus in New York, a high end teacher's going to make, over $100,000 a year. And so while, but it's also relative too, because, living in Wyoming versus living in New York, the cost of the cost of living is significantly different.
Hugely different.
Right. And
I was going to ask you about something with, we were talking about cost of livings. Did Mondami really get out? And because I know your son lives in New York, did Mondami really put out a bulletin and a press conference to tell businesses and everyone to keep their thermostats at 78 degrees so that they didn't stress out the grid? That. Yeah, he came out and said it.
Oh, because I know that a few days ago, my son called me and he was like, it's 103 degrees and it's humid.
Yeah, it's humid in New York.
And very interestingly, because we were having a conversation, he's like, Dad, my lights are flickering on and off. And so when you think about what's going on, well, no. Don't blame that on communism. It's the infrastructure, because if you think about it, the United States looks very different from space. If you go to space and you look down at nighttime, the east is like super lit up. Why? Because people live so close to each other. And so when everybody has their ACs on, it's going to impact the grid in a significant way.
We didn't know we were going to import all these immigrants and use much more electricity in the state of New York. We didn't know about this.
No,
we didn't think that was going to counterbalance the grid, Len.
No, Chris, that has nothing to do with it.
We weren't ultra realistic enough to think that we would need more energy production instead of capping nuclear production, and instead of telling us we can't drill oil to these are all the problems of our politicians. They're manifesting in front of us. And these things happen more so. Len, these problems happen worse in that area of the world in the United States than they do anywhere else. Everyone likes to say about, Texas had that big blackout.
No, brother, you're mixing variables.
How many times has New York had blackouts, Len? How many times has New York had blackouts? This goes back to the 70s and the 80s.
Okay, but here's the thing. I understand what you're saying, but here's the thing. When the United States was colonized, what happened is when they came over, they started off in the eastern states. And so there's large population centers, way more so in the east than there is in the west, because the United States it's more than 250 years old, but it's officially 250 years old. So the expansionism that happened to more of the western states, that's the reason why I made the point earlier, is when you look from space, and this has been the historical trend from the very beginning, is that the east is much more population dense than the west. And so when you have these issues, like even in Texas, when it got cold, what happened? You're going to blame your Republic?
That's the one time anybody says anything.
But the point is,
that was a natural disaster. This wasn't just we're turning the lights on.
Dude, no.
And it was fixed very fast.
Dude, okay, see, Len, this is a
how many times does Florida have blackouts?
Dude, you're making
the
a
lights
biased
don't
argument
flicker
right
in
now.
Florida,
Let me explain. Okay, here's your biased argument. Okay, in New York, bro, there's not too many instances where the weather gets over 100 degrees, because, at 90 degrees, it feels ridiculously hot because of the humidity. Very rarely does it get to 103. So the equivalent of Texas having, the pipes burst and all of those things is the 103 degree weather. It's not that's an act of nature. And so people respond to that nature, because remember, there in Texas, there were big calls for you to fix your grid, because it's based on an old electric grid and an old plumbing grid. And so you've got some issues there too, but I don't blame acts of nature to a governmental system. Things just get exposed. It's just like this. And I'll make this last comment. If I have a pot and it's a glass pot and I put water in it, it's not going to get exposed even if there's a little crack, right? But if I start to put that pot over fire and I start to heat it up, then those cracks are going to get exposed. That's the same thing that happened in Texas, and that's the same thing that just happened in New York. I mean, Mom Dominique just got there. So like, we can talk about, both states in terms of their governmental systems and their political philosophies, but those are two different very different things than the heat or the cold getting hot or cold.
I agree.
So.
I just wish that these guys that say these weird things like him, they would just go say it in the country where they're from, because they don't. They just don't. They don't want to go say these things where they're from because they can't. Look, we don't want that kind of stuff here. We don't we don't want that ideal here. That's not America. So stop trying to change America to be the rest of the world. That's my only point here. He doesn't have to come out like, because you know what it reminds me? It reminds me of the same flex alert in California. I shouldn't have to flex alert nothing.
Okay, I got a question for you. How many trash cans do you have, Chris? Do you have a garbage, and then do you have a recycle bin as well? And do you have different? Okay. Yeah. Well, the reason why is because, Mother Earth is the only place we have to live. And so we need to take care of her.
I agree with that.
So there's going to be sometimes that government step in to say, look, let's make sure that we take care of this planet we have. And so why don't you place your garbage in one trash can? You place your recyclables in another, because it makes the world better. It's not economically expedient to do that, but it's environmentally expedient to do that.
But then what about all the birds and mammals that we're killing with all the wind turbines? I mean, that's hurting the environment too.
Yeah, but there's not very many wind turbines.
But all the coal. What about all the coal power plants that India and China are building when we're not allowed to build any? What about that? They're killing everybody. France should ought to look at that. What about? You know what France does have?
So
it's good.
But I can make the same counter argument, which is, we're free. We're supposed to be a free country. Why don't we just let any company do whatever it wants? Why? Because we all have to live together.
We still operate off the golden rule in the United States. Don't do unto others as the silver. Well, yeah, don't do to others that you do to your. Wouldn't want to be done to yourself, right? So that's the golden rule. So we practice that. But anyways, look, Len, France does have it right. They have nuclear power. I am a big proponent of that. I think that we should be spending a ton of money on that instead of spending it think about it. If California would have invested $250 billion into nuclear energy instead,
be in a much better place now
instead of a high-speed rail. I mean, to me, if anybody would focus on infrastructure and make that the absolute goal, especially for, I think, any country, but specifically here in America, I think that you would create and solve a lot of problems, because that would force you to manufacture here, and it would force you to reinvest here, and it would create a lot of economic activity, and it would be for a good reason, and it would create more value, because you do feel it sometimes, especially in certain areas of SoCal, Len, where you drive around and you're going, dang, it's getting a little rough here. Like, when are we going to come in and fix this stuff? So, and this goes back, 5, 10 years, I was complaining about that. And here in Texas too, there are certain places where I just won't drive. I'm like, dude, this is ridiculous. This is absolutely unacceptable. This is unacceptable. I feel like I'm driving to Tijuana.
Drive over potholes, dude, and it messes up. Like, I just had to get, a major alignment on my car because the infrastructure is bad. Horrible. So I agree with you. Chris, especially in places where there's a growing population. And unfortunately, what happened is I wonder if the engineers, 100 years ago really would have foreshadowed the amount of growth that would happen and what that would mean with its infrastructure. Because the other thing is like, before, it was much cheaper to build roads and bridges and all of those things. And so the idea of such an expensive line item on the budget to build the infrastructure, I don't think they would have been able to foresee that. But regardless of that, we're a first world nation. And so because of that, we got to spend the money on the infrastructure. So I couldn't agree with you more on that.
Yeah, because it's embarrassing when you see certain shots of certain stadiums. Like, if you watch a World Cup and then you see certain shots of certain stadiums in America and you're like, bro, that's not a good shot of
it's not a good look.
That's not a good stadium. Like, there was one that they were doing and I was like, where is this stadium? Like, what country? And I'm like, that's a stadium in San Francisco? Like where they played in the Bay Area. I was like, that's horrible.
Candlestick Park, yeah.
Len, it was embarrassing. It was embarrassing. And then you see some of these stadiums in like Monterrey or even Mexico City. You're like, dude, this is insanity. But I mean, I understand, you get what you get. But at any rate, Len, it's been good. It's been good today.
I enjoy the conversation always, man.
And we'll see what happens with Iran. We'll see what happens. It'll be an interesting rest of the week. A lot of stuff going on. So I'm looking forward to seeing you here next week.
All right, brother. Take care. And for those of you that are here, as another reminder, always find time to talk with people that you disagree with. If you like the information, and if you dislike it, like it anyway, and then comment and tell us why, so then we can have a back and forth conversation with the growing community that we have. With that being said, Chris, it's always a pleasure. Until next week.
See you, Len.
Take care.
Conversation has given you clarity on your next steps. Please share this episode with someone who's walking the same path. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss future episodes. And remember, planning ahead isn't just prudent, it's an act of care. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on The Family Office.